So if you look at the back of your order of service, which some of you may have already done, you'll see a change this week. So what we used to be our principles and sources, we've now got this new Article 2 listed along with the graphic online. You should see a link to the order of service in your chat, and you'd have to scroll to the last page. So after a years-long discernment process that started back in 2020, we've been talking about this for a while, our UU principles have become our UU values. And there's a lot to say about this paradigm shift. I'm probably going to plan about one Sunday service a month, starting after Labor Day, and we'll kind of move through these in turn, kind of one value at a time, looking at all of this in depth. It'll probably take us about 9 months to get through it, so I look forward to that. In particular, at least to me, I think this graphic, I think they did quite a good job with this. Many theologically conservative religious movements are really locked in to the ancient past and are proud of never, ever changing their beliefs despite thousands of years passing. Now, we UUs are theologically liberal. We have always called ourselves a living tradition. We've always been committed to growing and changing and evolving in light of new insights and evidence and perspectives and experiences. We believe in evolution, right? Our symbol is the glowing, hot, dancing, alive fire of the chalice flame. Indeed, the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association, far from saying we'll never change, they actually demand that every 15 years we look at that Article 2, which is where the principles used to be found and where the new values are found. And they actually say every 15 years we have to look at these and decide if they need to be updated. And we actually have updated them a number of times over the years. 4 years ago, the UUA Board of Trustees, to be in alignment, compliance with that bylaw, appointed an Article 2 study commission, which is the most policy wonk name for a group I've ever heard, the Article 2 Study Commission. And that received input from thousands of UUs across the country, including many members of this congregation who voiced our opinions. And at UU General Assembly last year, these new values received preliminary support. They needed at least 50% to make it over that first year hurdle last summer. And this past year, they needed at least 2/3 to approve. They received over 2,000 votes for, which was 80%, and only 499 against, which is 19.8%. Now, by no means, though, was a yes vote guaranteed. 15 years ago, in 2009, we actually tried a wholesale revision of Article 2, and it lost 573 to 586, like a really, really close vote, and it didn't need a 2/3 majority. This one did. Now, one point that may be reassuring to some of you, I think some of you are probably really happy about this change, others of you may not be so happy. Fair enough. One point that may be reassuring to some of you is that the heart of our UU7 principles remain, if you read all this closely. And I realize this is like a lot. It's really hard to format something this long on one page and try not to take our whole order of service. So, but you will find our first principle embedded in the new equity value. Our second principle is distributed among a few different values. The third principle is now in the value of transformation. The fourth is under pluralism. The fifth is under justice, as well as that freedom of belief clause at the very end. The sixth is under justice as well. And the seventh is, of course, the new interdependence value, right? The interdependent web is now the interdependence value. These new values rooted in love at the center, I think, is extremely significant. For many years, Side with Love has been one of our most successful and impactful slogans for doing justice work. And choosing to say we have love at the center of our values is very much connected to that Side with Love campaign, as well as it is deeply rooted in the Universalist half of our Unitarian Universalist tradition in ways that I will share more details about with that in future months. There's just one other angle that I wanted to invite you to consider this morning, and again, we'll talk much more about this in coming months. So on the one hand, our UU principles have been with us for a long time. The original version was written in 1960, and that's the date that the Universalist Church in America voted to merge with the American Unitarian Association and consolidate together into the Unitarian Universalist Association, this unfortunately multisyllabic name that we're stuck with. Thank you, predecessors. So we have had these principles for more than 60 years. On the other hand, the principles have been updated a number of times over the years. They were updated to make them more inclusive of like feminist language. They were updated to include earth-centered spirituality. They've just been updated a number of times. But also, prior to 1960, Unitarianism and Universalism goes back centuries. So like we were okay as a people before the principles, and like we'll be okay afterward. So if we had more time, we could consider some of the historical covenants that preceded our UU principles. One of my favorites is from 1887. You can Google this if you want to look at it. It was passed by the Unitarians, and it was titled "Things Most Commonly Believed Among Us Today." That's essentially what this new values statement is. It's not some creedal test of what you have to believe to be UU. It's just things commonly believed among us today. I really like that title. It's not things you have to believe. It's not even things future generations will necessarily believe. It's just things commonly believed among us today. Another hugely influential 19th century Unitarian statement that preceded our principles is called the Blake Covenant. Some of you that have been Unitarian a long time may have grown up in congregations that said this covenant every week. It goes like this: love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. You can hear even in some of these new choices around the values some echoes of that Blake Covenant. So as our Unitarian and Universalist forebears have done in the past with previous covenants, at least for the next 15 years, we're invited to take this for a test drive, see how we like it, see what we can learn from it together. And I actually think we're gonna find there's some really interesting and useful stuff in this new, but we'll be exploring that together over the coming year. And as our new DRE, Layla, has already shared with you, one way of remembering these values is the acronym JETPIG. I think this whole JETPIG thing does have potential. I'll share it now. Layla did draw that. Layla's a very talented artist. I'm not, so I designed some with ChatGPT. So here's a JETPIG. Here's another. Now, do you notice love at the center on the t-shirt, right? Here's another JETPIG on vacation. That's JETPIG on vacation, ski JETPIG. This is steampunk JETPIG. Do you notice the t-shirt? This is the UU t-shirt. Here's another UU t-shirt. And do you notice love is the power that powers the rocket? All right. So if anyone's not into JETPIG, I will share with you one other way of remembering these values using your hand. This is created by Emily Jones, the DRE at our congregation in Portland, Maine. So if you take your one finger, so transformation, so think of like a little bud coming up. So transformation, that's the first one to remember. The second, turn your fingers this way to the equal sign, equity. So transformation, equity. Then three together, where you have three UUs, you have three or more opinions. So that's pluralism. Four, bring that down into a fist, justice. So do you see how we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4? Get it? Yep, you're with me, I say. Generosity, so extending that hand, open hand, generosity. And then interdependence, extend that open hand out like you're shaking, so interdependence. And then, of course, bring it in, love at the center, right? So that's enough. That's a handy way of remembering them, right? Oh, God, I'll be here all week. All right, I know. It's dad jokes, man. I gotta do it. All right. So in a few moments, we'll have a minute of silent meditation, in which time I'm going to leave up this slide for you to just kind of open your heart, see kind of an appreciative inquiry. It's probably less helpful at this point to focus on what you may not like. Maybe just open your heart to what do you like? What stands out to you? I invite you to do that during the silent meditation. For now, I'll leave you with some words from my colleague, the Reverend Victoria Safford, a member of the UU General Assembly Care Team and one of our most rightly celebrated voices, a very, very talented writer and minister. She spoke of the importance of this recent vote and recalled that Victoria recently retired. Victoria's been a UU for a long time and said, "I am old enough to remember," she said, "when our principles and our purposes were new, and they were themselves deeply controversial among us, with many concerned that they signaled an end to our movement by creating some kind of new creed. And yet," she said, "here we are, not destroyed." We can neither be brought down nor saved by a bylaw change. It is the way we move that matters, the way that we move forward together. The weight of the trust and respect and compassion that we bear for each other, the strength of our great covenant. However a vote goes, we do put love at the center, unflinching, unhesitant. To the gathered delegates at GA, she asked, "What matters to you most about this vote? And what will happen if the vote doesn't go your way? What will truly be lost? What will truly be lost? And what won't be, regardless? What will abide either way, still holding you, still calling your name, the reason you got out of bed and got here this morning or logged on? Friends," she said, "however it goes, we must stay hand in hand, manos y manos, drawing our circle more wide." And I'm grateful to be on that journey with all of you.
Last Saturday morning, around 10 o'clock, the temperature was already approaching 95 degrees. That was in the shade. And I hurried outside. I hurried because I wanted to get in at least a 10-minute walk before it hit 100. I headed east to where my street meets Verden Road. I turned right and another right onto 5 Shillings Road. By this time, I was telling myself to be more mindful in my walking and less concerned about the temperature and to slow down and pay attention. My first Buddhist teacher was Thich Nhat Hanh in his books. He was the Vietnamese monk who began to be very popular in the early 90s and whose mindfulness teachings included mindful walking. It didn't seem as hot there on 5 Shillings Road as elsewhere, probably because 5 Shillings Road has the thickest summer and fall canopy of tree branches of any street I've known. I slow down and begin to notice my surroundings. Within a few feet of slowing down, I slowed down my breathing, and I began to pay better attention to what was going on all around me. And then I caught a flicker of red off to the right. Then it flew closer, this bird. It stopped off on a branch and sang his tune, a short one, and repeat. Its pattern was to fly parallel to the sidewalk, land, sing, repeat. A northern cardinal. As I continued down the block, the cardinal's flight pattern stayed parallel to mine, and its speed forward, with all its dips and graceful pirouettes, stayed about equal to my walking speed. Then about 3/4 of the way down the block, a quick movement in the brush, an eastern cottontail hopped a diagonal path from under a porch to a new spot closer to the sidewalk and continued sitting there as I approached. There was nothing unusual about seeing a cottontail or about its bright, one-eyed stare. Maybe something a little unusual about how close it let me get to it. This pleasant and deeply shaded block usually has at least a few humans and the dogs being walked by humans, but on this mid-morning of extreme heat, it was just me mindfully walking with the red cardinal and the brown speckled cottontail and the 5 Shillings Road green canopy as nearby witnesses. As we came close to the corner of 5 Shillings and Mill Pond Roads, I was about to lose the company of the cardinal and the rabbit and the deep shade of the canopy, and I looked up in appreciation and wonder. I felt the wonder that mindfully walking and closeness to nature can bring I had felt the friendliness of the cardinal and the curiosity of the rabbit. And now I felt the presence of the trees and felt a fleeting, odd sensation that they were somehow communicating with each other. Immersion in the natural world can bring forth a sense of awe, a feeling difficult to articulate. As Unitarian Universalists, and here I'm quoting words that you can find here, further down about 3/4 of the way, under Inspirations. We honor the heading, we honor the interdependent web of all existence with reverence for the great web of life. Under the heading Inspirations, you see the words, we are inspired by direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder that are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. These experiences open our hearts and renew our spirits and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings. In Reverend Carl's chalice lighting words today, you heard the words of Albert Einstein. Although Einstein was never a member of a Unitarian congregation, at least not that we know of, as a scientist and also someone who was awed by nature, he sought direct experience with nature. His thoughts uniquely model a way to think about nature and the sacred. In Einstein's words, he speaks of regarding the mysterious in nature as, quote, the most beautiful experience we can have. That is the mysterious experience. And Einstein said that to have this feeling, this mysteriousness, is to know the emotion that constitutes true religiosity. In contrast, Einstein said that he cannot believe in a God who rewards and punishes and who has a will of the kind that we experience in ourselves. This photograph of Einstein is from the Library of Congress. I found it online with a caption that quotes Einstein as saying, "What I see in nature is a magnificent structure that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility." Einstein said a personal God doesn't exist. By a personal God, I think he meant there is no such God to pray to when the going gets tough. No such God to ask for personal favors or blessings. And yet, Einstein regarded himself as a deeply religious person. He often said that he based his idea of his God on Spinoza's God. So who is this Spinoza, whose conception of God was so important to Einstein? Baruch Spinoza was a 17th century Dutch philosopher of Portuguese Jewish origin, born in Amsterdam. He was expelled from the Dutch Jewish community for questioning Jewish doctrines, and then distanced himself from all religious affiliations and became an important and radical philosopher. Einstein had been born into a Jewish family who did not really practice Judaism, and the young Albert attended Catholic schools because they were there. In 1929, he was asked by the Rabbi Herbert S. Goldstein whether he believed in God, and Einstein said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists, not in a God who concerns himself with the faiths and actions of human beings, with our frail and feeble minds." That deeply emotional conviction of the presence of a superior reasoning power, Einstein continued, a power which is revealed in the incomprehensible universe, forms my idea of God. Just like Spinoza, Einstein did not believe in a personal God who interacts with people and answers personal prayers. That doesn't mean that Spinoza and Einstein did not believe in God. Like Spinoza, Einstein believed in an impersonal deity. He believed that a divine design was reflected in the elegant laws that govern the way the universe worked. The Indian philosopher Mahatma Gandhi was also an important influence on Einstein's spiritual development. When Einstein lived in Berlin, so before moving to the US in 1933, when Einstein lived in Berlin, he hung a portrait of Gandhi and described Gandhi to visitors as the greatest man of our age. In the realm of politics, Einstein closely identified with Gandhi's policy of satyagraha. Satyagraha, the first 5 letters, S-A-T-Y-A, mean truth. And together with the word graha, the whole word means appeal to and insistence on or reliance on the truth. One of Gandhi's sources for satyagraha was rooted in the ancient Hindu religious text called the Upanishads. Some scholars say that the idea can also be found in Buddhism, especially the meaning of nonviolence. Satyagraha and the policy of nonviolence had importance for Einstein when, during the 1953 McCarthy hearings that were used to root out any communist sympathizers, a member of the teachers' union of the city of New York, who had been called to testify against fellow teachers, wrote to Einstein and asked his advice. She asked Einstein if she should agree to testify and invoke the Fifth Amendment, and Einstein responded that instead of testifying at all, she should use Gandhi's tactic of non-cooperation, in other words, satyagraha, and refuse. Einstein gave her that advice because he believed that the Fifth Amendment was being misused as a tool for the prosecution of others. Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore was a famous Indian mystical poet and philosopher who won the Nobel for Literature in 1913. This photo of Tagore may have been taken when he visited Einstein in 1930 in Potsdam, Germany. Einstein and Tagore had several things in common. They both loved music, and they shared like-minded ideas about religion. Like Einstein, Tagore did not find religion in scriptures, not in tradition, not in rituals. Tagore believed in a spiritual world that is not separate from this world and is the innermost truth of this world. Both Einstein and Tagore believed that the divine is not isolated from the world. Before leaving the subject of Tagore, I want to share the significant degree to which he left an influence on Unitarianism. We didn't distribute the gray hymnals today, but sometime you might want to take the opportunity to look in that gray hymnal for his name, Tagore, and you'll find there 8 readings and hymns attributed to him. For example, reading 613 is from the Upanishads, And that's Upanishads is a group of more than 100 texts central to the Hindu religion and philosophy. During one of Tagore's stays in the United States in the second decade of the 20th century, Tagore visited Unitarian congregations, including First Unitarian in Dallas and the congregation in Urbana, Illinois. I just happened to know about those two. I'm sure there were others. Why did he go to Urbana? His son was a student at the University of Illinois. And at the Unitarian Church in Dallas, I did my internship there, and I remember hearing stories about his visit. Nobody who was actually there. But so many people, it was said that so many people turned out to hear him that the church could not be accommodated, and they were down the street trying to listen to him. Einstein also supported Unitarianism. He once said, "If we succeed in renewing the spirit of the American Constitution after the confusions of our day, it will be in considerable measure to the credit of the courageous efforts of the Unitarians and their Beacon Press." I know, Carl, I've heard you speak about the Beacon Press. It's a wonderful press. Now we're coming full circle. Remember that photo 5 slides back of Einstein standing and looking at nature? It doesn't show the caption of that photo, and I alluded to it before, but I want to mention again. The caption quotes Einstein as saying, "What I see in nature is a magnificent structure that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility." And he said that when you have this feeling, this mysteriousness, you know the emotion that constitutes, that is true religiosity. He said he cannot believe in a God who rewards and punishes and who has a will of the kind that we experience in ourselves. The subtitle of this new book, this is a new book, just was released last month, is How the Unseen World of Plant Intelligence Offers a New Understanding of the Life on Earth. I first learned about this book, The Light Eaters, in a review in the June 12th issue of the New Yorker magazine. And when I read that review this past week, I was amazed at the relevance to this topic today. And I wondered, what would Einstein, who died in 1955, what would Einstein say about the recent extensive research that shows new evidence for plant communication? To clarify, this is plants with each other, not plants with you and me. I think Einstein would have been awed by it. Up till now, published plant research that demonstrated trees talking to each other had not been sufficiently replicated, and some botanists who dared to publish such research lost the respect of other botanists, and some lost their jobs. Now, however, there is stronger proof of plant communication. A quote from the reviewer, she says, Schlanger, in this new book, The Light Eaters, writes about scientists who are studying how plants change their shape and respond to sound, how they're using electricity to convey information, how they send one another chemical signals. I wondered, what else might Einstein have said about this new book? To answer that, I reflect that Einstein believed in an impersonal deity. He believed that a divine design was reflected in the elegant laws that governed the way the universe worked, and that he would have regarded this new research as part of the divine design. And the last slide. Yesterday, I returned to 5 Shillings Road in a meditative walk. and took note of the tree canopy and recalled my impression the week before that the trees were somehow communicating. It's amazing to have learned in the meantime from this new book that there is actually evidence that they probably were. That's easy to get carried away, imagining they're talking about the people and the animals on the street below, as if wondering, will that barking dog ever shut up? Of course, that's not the sort of communication that Schlanger is talking about, but she does see plants as fellow beings. In closing, I invite us to seek direct experience of the transcending mystery and wonder, because they are the primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. Such experiences have the potential to open our hearts and renew our spirits and transform our lives. Each of our stories is different. What we have in common are the available sources of inspiration.